Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Gear, and I'm an SE with Cisco Meraki. What I wanted to do was spend a little bit of time with you today to talk about Catalyst monitoring. So Catalyst monitoring is the concept of being able to take your pre-existing 9000 series switches, like a 9200, a 9300, or a 9500, and be able to use native iOS XE commands to create a VTI tunnel to have these switches participate in a Meraki organization. Now, the benefit to that is that today maybe you have some Catalyst switches that are working autonomously in your environment, working great, switching packets the way they're supposed to, but there's a little bit of a lack of being able to have visibility into your network relative to what those switches are doing, right? Or what the clients are doing that are connected to those switches. So by being able to take some iOS XE commands and registering them to the Meraki dashboard, now what you're getting is the capabilities of integrating these switches into your dashboard and having these switches be able to report information relative, just like a Meraki switch does. So when we look at things relative to like telemetry, application visibility control, the status of the switch itself, the clients that are connected to that switch, and how your network is operating on that switch as platform, those are some of the benefits that come by integrating it to the Meraki dashboard. Now, maybe you're a hybrid customer, right? Maybe you have Cisco switching and you have a little bit of Meraki switching, or maybe you have Meraki wireless today with Catalyst switching. This is the concept again, right, of being able to get everything in one pane of glass so that you can get a bigger understanding of what's going on in your environment. Now, what I thought we could do this morning is to actually log into the dashboard. I have a Catalyst 9200 series switch. We'll take a look at some documentation real quick and review it. That's public documentation that you can use. And we'll get a 9200L series switch onboarded into a Meraki test dashboard. So let's go ahead and do that now. So, taking a look at my shared screen here. Whoa, helps if I share the screen. This is public documentation that you can take a look at, and I'm going to actually include it in the video as a link that talks about the overview of Catalyst monitoring and has the commands or the prerequisites that are needed for the switch to be able to get it integrated. So right here, looking at the eligible Catalyst devices today, we have 9200s in the LNCX, 9300s, LNCX, and the 9500 series switches. The requirement around the software, because again, we're still running native iOS XE on the switch itself, is 17.3.1 through 17.9.4. From a pre-onboarding perspective, if we've met those requirements, or if we have not met those requirements, the documentation includes links where you can go out to the Cisco support site, download the firmware, and get that switch up to an acceptable level of iOS XE. Now, from the Meraki side, the other requirement that we have here is having an API key enabled in your organization. Because what the process is going to look like today is we're going to get our Catalyst switch connected to our pre-existing network, get it routed, get it some internet connectivity, and then we're going to download an application from the Meraki dashboard that's going to actually talk to the switch via SSH, and it's also going to log in via your organization's API key to get those two devices starting to talk to each other, right? So the Catalyst switch to the Meraki dashboard. From a network perspective, there are a couple requirements, and we won't go too deep into them, but the computer must reach these particular locations on TCP port 443. And depending on what region you're in, we're looking at the Americas today. That's where I'm located. We want to make sure that the switch has connectivity to this TLS gateway. Now, getting to the meat of the install, if you will. These are the requirements that are needed by the switch, right? These are the commands we're going to put on the switch to get it some layer 3 connectivity, and then we're actually going to get it into the dashboard. So with Catalyst monitoring, there is a requirement to have the IP routing command enabled. Doesn't mean we're going to be doing, you know, inner SVI routing. The only thing that we're enabling here is the capability to do some routing over the VTI from a loopback to be able to get that communication up into the dashboard securely, right? So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the dashboard here, and we're going to get this switch up and configured into a test environment. So let me go ahead and reshare my screen here real quick. Okay, so we have this test network here, and if I look at the network-wide topology, you're going to see that I have an MS250 in this environment today. But hanging off of that MS250 is a C9200L switch, and it is connected on Gigabit Ethernet 101 to the MS250, which is on port 2 here. So I'm going to come over to my console, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up this 9200 switch. And we're going to get it programmed onto the network. So the first requirement here, right, is that we need to have layer 2 connectivity. So if I'm going to look at my interface here, I see that I have switch port mode trunk and trunk native VLAN 40. So that should give me base connectivity at a layer 2 level. So the next thing we need to do is validate and make sure that we have a layer 3 management IP address on this switch. And we do have an IP address at 192.168.240.155 on VLAN 40. So I should be able to ping my next hop, which is going to be 192.168.240.1. Okay, and I do have connectivity there. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that document, and we're going to get some of these other requirements programmed up. So IP routing is one thing that we need to do, and obviously we would need to have a gateway of last resort. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And I'm going to enable IP routing. And so from that perspective, we've met that requirement. Now, the other thing that we need to do is we need to enable DNS resolution for the switch, right? Because it's going to go out to the internet. It's going to contact that TLS gateway DNS name that was in the document a little earlier. So that's the next thing we're going to do here is we are going to use an IP name server. I'll go ahead and use Umbrella. And we do need to enable IP domain lookup. Okay, and so at this point, I should be able to ping something like google.com. And that was successful. So those requirements have been met. The next thing that we need to do is we need to synchronize time. So if you have a time server in your environment, and this is true for DNS too, right? If you have a DNS server in your environment you want to use internally inside of your organization, you can do that. Otherwise, we can point it to the outside, right? So for NTP, let's go ahead and enable that. And I'm just going to use pool.ntp.org since I know that we have DNS resolution now. Actually, I'm going to iburst that. Okay, and then the next requirement is we need to have AAA new model enabled on the switch. Have that. And so the other thing that we need to do is we need to validate that we are going to have SSH connectivity to this switch from our computer because we're going to use that application to log into the switch via SSH. Now, if you've noticed right up to this point in time, I have really been using a switch that's out of the box, right? Kind of did an erase on it, and I'm building it from scratch. You don't have to do that, right? If you already have switches in your production network that you want to integrate into Catalyst monitoring for Meraki, uh, that's not a problem, right? The reason that I'm doing it this way in this video is that I want to concentrate on the requirements in the areas that are needed to get this switch up and running, right? So this is a non-destructive configuration, right? We're just adding components to the configuration. We're not actually destroying the flash or anything like that. Your configuration is going to stay intact, all right? So since we've had a couple seconds here, let's take a look at the NTP status. Okay, and the clock is synchronized, so we should be having good time. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a username, give it a privilege of 15, and a password of let me in now. Okay, and obviously, since it's a lab, I just use clear text. We should be making sure that our passwords are encrypted. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. So at this point, we have connectivity. We've created a local user account. We have the AAA new model enabled. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to SSH into this switch. At 155. Okay, and I am in, so this looks good. Oh, you know what? The other thing that we need to do is let's give this switch a host name. C9200. There we go. Okay. All right, so I think we're done on the switch side. So the next thing that we need to do is go to the Meraki dashboard and we're going to download that onboarding client that I was talking about. So if I go to switching on my dashboard and I go to add a switch, right here, there's a link that says, add your Cisco Catalyst 9K devices into dashboard. If I click on the link that says learn how, you can see here that we get an option to download an application supported on Mac OS, Windows, or Linux. So I'm going to go ahead and download this app real quick and save it to my downloads. Okay, and our download is complete here. So we're going to go ahead and get this installed on the local computer. All right, that looks good. Okay, and so here is our login for our cloud monitoring for Catalyst. So again, this is where we need the organization's API key. So I'm going to stop sharing here real quick and I'm going to grab my API key and get logged in. And then the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the organization that I want to put this switch into. So let's give it 1 second here and let me go ahead and grab my API key. Okay, go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to paste that into my field. Click Start, and then I'm going to select my org. Click Next. Okay, and let me go ahead and reshare. Okay, so again, just to recap, all I did there was I selected my organization's API key. I pasted it into the login field, if you will, selected my organization, and now here, this is where we're going to input the information to connect to the switch that's on our network. Now, if you notice here and also in the documentation, as we scroll down a little bit, obviously this also includes the description of everything that we need to do to get the device onboarded. You'll also see here, right, for the device information, we can add more than one device at a time, right? So if you had, 10 or 20 switches that you wanted to add that were Catalyst that met all the requirements, then it would go ahead and bring those switches in and start to go through the process of getting them into the dashboard for Catalyst monitoring. Okay, so going back to the application here, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in on the management IP of this switch that I have. And so my username was admin. And so here we're going to do just test SSH, make sure that we can log into the switch. And that was successful. So I'm going to go ahead and click next here. Now on the pre-flight or the pre-check here, these are the things that the application is going to look at from a configuration perspective on the switch to make sure that we've met all of the prerequisites. So we'll go ahead and start the pre-check here. Okay, and it looks like our pre-check is 100% and it's ready for onboarding. So over here, if I click next, it now asks me the network that I would like to put this switch into. In my environment, I'm going to go ahead and grab this Rec03 desk. And I'm going to click next. And then I'm going to select the devices if there were multiples to add to that network. And then right here, if I click on Show Details, I'm going to be able to see all of the configuration changes that this application is going to use to get the device onboarded into my environment. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And at this point, the switch is now being provisioned by this application to start to talk to the dashboard. So what's happening here, right? We're putting in a local loopback. We're creating a VTI tunnel. We're putting in some certs so that we can start to create that tunnel to the dashboard. Now, in the next couple steps, right, what we're actually going to do is once that device is onboarded, it's actually going to start to get some additional configuration information and start implementing that on the switch. So you're going to see some additional routing commands come in. You're also going to be able to see some things relative to like flow exports, and we're going to have some flow statements on the interfaces too, so that we can start collecting telemetry around AVC and our application statistic usage per client, stuff like that. All right, so now we can see that the device is connected successfully. So that means that it is operationally talking to the dashboard right now. And if I click next here, we get a summary, right? So right here, I can click view, or if I want to, right, from this perspective, I can also take a look at the logs. And so the logs are going to give me a full output of everything that happened from a command perspective as we were going through this process. Now, if I go to my dashboard and I go back over to switching and the network that I placed this switch into, we should now see a device called C9200 lab, right? So this switch is now showing up. You can see via hosting. That's how we're advertising the switch in the dashboard. And from this perspective, you can see that the switch is online, but we still have some ports that are dark here. Now, if I go to the configuration and I actually take a look at configuration of the switch, you're going to see that there's still some things that are being added based on what I talked about. You would be able to review this in your own environment if you would like. But at this point, what we're going to do is I'm going to pause the video and we're going to let this switch simmer for about, I would say, like, we want to give it maybe 4 to 10 minutes at the most, right? And then what you're going to see on the dashboard is some additional port information. The ports are going to start coming alive, things like that. So I'm going to pause the video here real quick, and we'll come back and revisit this switch in a couple minutes. Okay, and we are back. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And so what we did again is where we left it off, right, is we needed to give the switch a couple minutes to talk to the dashboard, have the dashboard collect telemetry via netconf from that switch, and get the configuration updated in the dashboard, if you will. So now if I look at this switch over here, I now see that it is fully online. And so we have our uplink port, and that is the only active port on this switch right now, right? But if we look at the configuration from this switch, so like, for example, gigabit Ethernet 104, you can see that we have our configuration in here. It's a regular endpoint port, right? And if I go over to 104, you can see that it carried over all of that configuration, right? So with Catalyst monitoring, right, the concept here is that it's non-destructive. We're just adding additional configuration to the switch, and then we're pulling that pre-existing configuration out of the switch and displaying it on the dashboard. So with Catalyst monitoring, we're truly monitoring, right? The switch is in a read-only state, if you will. We're collecting telemetry and data and statistics from the switch, but we are not able to modify any ports in the switch when we're in Catalyst monitoring mode, right? There is the concept of Catalyst management, and I'll go ahead and create an additional video for that for Catalyst management. But with Catalyst monitoring, right, the concept here again is we're keeping iOS XE on the switch. All of our commands and our configurations are going to be via SSH, right? At today, right, the firmware management is from a TFTP server or an SFTP server in your pre-existing environment, and you using SSH or parallel SSH or whatever tool that you use for firmware upgrade and management on the switching platform. That's different from Catalyst management, where the switch actually gets consumed 100% by the Meraki dashboard on the 9300s. And again, we'll talk about that in a different video. So just scoping out the configuration on this switch real quick, let's take a look at it. And you're going to be able to see some of the changes that the dashboard has made, right? So we now have some AAA statements in here for an account called Meraki. We have flow records that we have introduced into the environment. We have flow file exports. You can see that we're sending that data to the cloud. We do have additional trust points that have been created. We have a device tracking policy now. We have enabled LLDP. We have some class maps that have been created above and beyond the auto QoS for telemetry data. Here is our crypto tunnel for Meraki, pointing to that TLS gateway. Here is our Loopback 1000 interface for the TLS connection itself to Meraki. And you can see in our configurations of our regular ports here, we have the IP flow monitor statements now included to be able to collect that net flow and AVC information from the switch and send that to the Meraki dashboard. Going down here just a little bit further, you'll see that we have created a couple access lists here for Meraki. We have a logging host. We did enable some traps, and we have created some access classes on VTY 16 through 19. And then we have an additional set of information that's outside of this video that is in regards to all of the telemetry information that we're sending northbound and the field mappings and output statistics for the switch that gets sent to the dashboard. So going to the dashboard, just reviewing the switch real quick. If we come over here, we've already taken a look at the ports, but let's take a look at the switch itself, right? So just like a regular Meraki switch, we can see the configuration on this device. We can see that it's statically assigned. You can see the public IP that it's using, the gateway, the DNS, the serial numbers, one for Catalyst and one for Meraki. We can see our firmware version, and we can see now that it's going to be participating in the topology itself. So if I go to network-wide and topology, what we used to see is just a little diamond, what the MS250 was collecting as an LODP CDP neighbor. This switch is now a fully compliant switch that is participating in the Meraki network topology. Now, from a tools perspective, again, with this being Catalyst, what we can do is we can go to our top row over here for tools, and we have the capability of pinging from this device. We can do port cycling. We can take a look at the MAC forwarding table, but we can also bring up a terminal, right? So I can bring up a terminal internally on the web page here, and I'm going to be able to produce any read-only commands, right? So for example, if I wanted to do a show run on a particular interface, that command is ran from the dashboard itself and we get the output. Now, if I wanted to actually go into a switch configuration, right, we can see that when I try to go into config T, the command is not allowed, right? So again, read-only, but it allows you to collect information from the switch's perspective via the dashboard, so not having to flip-flop between windows, if you will, to be able to get additional information about the switch. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope that this was a good use of your time. If you have a spare Catalyst in your environment, try it out. Give it a shot. See what you get. And by all means, if you're interested in the Catalyst management, where we take a 9300 series switch and we get it 100% consumed by the Meraki dashboard, please check out that video in my video feeds. And above and beyond that, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for your time. Take care.